Okay, great. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to go over introductions, program information, that's why you're here, tuition fees, scholarships and funding, the application deadline and the associated fee with the application. We're going to go over admission requirements for each of our programs, supplemental documentation that's required as part of the application process. We're going to go over the information about the supplemental questions, reference information, additional topics of discussion that you said you wanted me to cover, and then we'll take questions from you if you have anything specific you would like to ask. Okay, Nancy, you're first on my list. Would you like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy Inchley. I'm the Graduate Affairs Assistant for the Applied Psychology ARC. I've been here at Western since 1999 and in graduate studies since 2006. But with the Faculty of I was with the Faculty of Health Sciences and joined the Faculty of Education in the spring of 2020. So welcome, and please feel free to ask questions at the end.
Thanks, Nancy. Somebody alerted me I wasn't sharing my screen. I'm going through, I'm like, oh, Zoom is updated. It's changed how it looks, when in actuality I wasn't sharing. But can everybody see my screen now? Yes. Great, thank you, and sorry about that. Okay, Jane, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Jane Golf, and I am the Graduate Affairs Assistant for the Critical Policy, Equity, and Leadership Studies programs. I've been with the Faculty of Education for 2 years, and formerly I was with the Ivy School of Business for 13 years. I'm your point of contact, should you be fortunate enough to join our programs, that you will direct questions towards if you are in the CPOL's ARC of programs.
Great. Thank you so much, Jane. So I do also want to let everybody know that when the recording becomes available, I will be sending out the slides as well as letting you know where you can find the recording. Okay, so you'll get to see the slides that you've missed. Okay, so I'm Allison Watson. I'm the recruitment coordinator for the Faculty of Education graduate programs. So I can answer any questions that you have about the admissions process, what you can expect from the application. I do also have program information. I'm a wealth of knowledge, so if you have any questions, definitely let me know. We recently transitioned back to work, so we will be offering all of our programs on site. There's no more online aspect of the PhD programs. I will say if we were still at home, my cat, she would be joining us here in the presentation. She's very sad that I've come back to work. She misses me when I'm gone. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of the program as well as the application. Okay, so let's get into the program information. So I'm going to be bouncing back and forth, but I'll explain what areas I'm talking about. So for this, we're looking at the critical policy, equity, and leadership. And because we're at the Faculty of Education, we short form everything. So that means, so we're looking at the CPELS program. We're also looking at applied linguistics and curriculum studies. Okay, so all students in those 3 fields of study, they do go through the same program trajectory. It's the same for all of the programs. So this is a 4-year funded full-time research intensive degree. So in year 1 fall, students, the typical student will take 3 courses. Same with year 1 winter, also 3 courses. In the year 1 summer, students will complete either their qualifying or comprehensive exam. It depends on which program you're in. If you're in our CPOLS program, you'll be completing a qualifying exam. If you're in applied linguistics or curriculum studies, you're going to be completing a comprehensive exam. Okay. And then we move on to year 2. So year 2 in the fall, students are typically working on their thesis proposal. In winter, they're working on your thesis. And it actually, as you move through the program, you'll continue to work on your thesis throughout your remaining time in the program. So there's a lot of time spent on your thesis, and that's because that's where we want you spending most of your time. We want to give you plenty of time to complete your thesis. Like I said, this is a 4-year funded degree, so we want students to move through the program requirements fairly quickly to focus on your thesis, because it's going to take you a long time to write that. Okay. So now I want to shift over to the School and Applied Child Psychology program. Okay, so if you're interested in that program, I hope you weren't paying attention to the other slides. So for the School and Applied Child Psychology people, again, it is a 4-year funded full-time research intensive degree. In year 1 fall, students take 3 courses, and then there's a seminar, and it's a course, but it's a seminar that you take. In year 1 winter, you're going to take 2 courses. You have that seminar again, and then you're working on your practicum 1. And then in the summer of year 1, you take 1 course, and then you're working on your qualifying exam. Okay. So then we move into year 2. So year 2 fall, you're doing your practicum 2 and your seminar. The same with year 2 winter, you're doing your practicum 2 and your seminar. And then the end of your year 2, you're going to be working on your thesis proposal. So moving on to year 3. So year 3 fall, you're moving on to practicum 3. You're doing your seminar course and then your thesis as well. And then in the winter of year 3, practicum 3, seminar, and thesis. Summer of year 3, you're devoted to your thesis for that term. And then we move into your final year, year 4. So fall is actually, all of this year is internship and thesis. Okay. So that's when you'll be finishing your program. So for tuition fees, I do need to let you know about tuition fees. Even though I did say it was a funded program, I'm going to give you more information about that. So each year tuition fees are set by our Senate, and then the fees are published on the Office of the Registrar's webpage. So unfortunately, we can't provide an exact amount of tuition for this program because tuition does increase by up to 8% every academic year. So I will let you know the university will pay the cost of your tuition for successful applicants for the first 12 terms or 4 years of the program. If you're beyond that 4-year funding window, you will pay the cost of your tuition as well as ancillary fees. So I do want to mention that during those 12 terms, Western will pay for the cost of tuition for the PhD, for PhD students, but students will still be responsible to pay their ancillary fees. Okay, so there are 2 separate fees, the tuition and then the ancillary fees. So Western pays the cost of your tuition, but students are still responsible for paying their ancillary fees. Okay, and as I said, if students take longer than the 12 terms to complete their degree, the responsibility to pay tuition and ancillary fees rests with the student until the time that they complete the program. And then when I send out the slides, you can see the cost of tuition in the link that I've provided. Okay, so along with the cost of tuition, Western will give students, though the students will receive a funding package each year in the amount of $13,000 Canadian. Okay, so the cost of your tuition is included, and then the $13,000 funding package per year. Along with that, the Faculty of Education does offer many internal scholarships, but there's two that I want to highlight. We have a scholarship, it's second year for this, students living with disabilities and Indigenous students. We have a specific internal scholarship for people who fall in that category. Okay, and then again, when I send out this information, you'll be able to follow the link to see additional details. So along with the internal scholarships, this program is eligible for some external scholarships, awards by the government is what I'm going to highlight. So there's two that our students mainly apply for. There's the OGS, it's Ontario Graduate Scholarship, and then the Canadian Graduate Scholarship Doctoral, okay, or CGSD. And under that Canadian Graduate Scholarship, there's three different areas. The majority of our students fall under the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. And again, because we short form everything, it's SHRC. Okay, so if you become a student, you're going to hear SHRC thrown around a lot. Okay, so it is a scholarship that our doctoral students can apply for. And again, I'm providing the link for more information. Okay. And because we are the Faculty of Education, I had to include a pop quiz. So here's the quiz. And again, no pressure. So how many terms per year are students enrolled in? Is it 1, 2, or 3? Great, everybody got it right. I always say I don't get summers off, so students don't get summers off either. Okay, so here's the second question. Who likes cats the most? Allison Watson, Nancy Inchley, or Jane Golf? It's me. It's me. I'm actually trying to make my cat Instagram famous. It's not going well. She's got about 700 followers right now. So if you like cute cats, email me and I'll send you her information. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the application now that we've gone over the program details. Okay, so the application deadline. So we've got different deadlines based on your category. Okay, so for our international students, the deadline for all of our programs, for all of our PhD programs, is January 15th. Okay, domestic students for the School and Applied Child Psychology program have the same deadline. So it's January 15th, 2022. Domestic students who are applying to the Critical Policy, Equity and Leadership program, or CPELS, the deadline is February 15th, 2022. Domestic students who are applying to Applied Linguistics or Curriculum Studies program, your deadline is March 15th. Okay, keep those deadlines in mind because it is the responsibility of the applicant to make sure that the application is submitted. The application and all of the supporting documents, including your references, are submitted. If your references are still outstanding, your application is considered incomplete and it will not go forward to the admissions committee. It will only be sent to the admissions committee when we receive every part of your application. So the application fee is $125 Canadian, and it's payable by credit card or money order. And I will let you know that money orders do delay the processing time of your application because the department has to receive it. So make sure that that your money order is received by the deadline. And I can't stress this enough. I've got it again. The important note, make sure that all of your documents are submitted for the application, including your references. It's the applicant's responsibility to make sure everything is submitted by that deadline. Okay. So for the admission requirements, I've again broken this out by program. So those people who are interested in the School and Applied Child Psychology, plug your ears right now. This doesn't apply to you. So this is for the Applied Linguistics, Curriculum Studies, and CPELS programs. So we're looking for a research-based master's degree in education or equivalent from an accredited university, a minimum of 80% or equivalent, 80% average or equivalent in previous graduate work, evidence of previous scholarly research, such as a master's thesis, or again, short form everything, MRP, Master's Research Project, or a qualifying research paper. Also, and it's part of the supplemental documents, clear statements of plans for future study and research. So recommended, so the first one was required and this is recommended. So previous qualifications and work in an educational setting. So that could be teaching experience, either college or university level or in elementary or high schools. So I do want to highlight some notes and exceptions. So students with master's degrees and an excellent academic record in a related field who have experience in education and in teaching, but they might not have the professional teaching credentials, will still be considered for admission. Also, students may be required to make up for any deficiencies in their specific backgrounds by taking appropriate additional coursework. And if this is one of your exceptions, you would be notified in your offer of admission. That's up to the admissions committee, and it's up to them, and it will be included in your offer of admission. That comes from this department, the Faculty of Education. Okay, School and Applied Child Psychology people, unplug your ears. Everybody else can plug your ears. So what is required for the School and Applied Child Psychology PhD? We're looking for a master's degree with a thesis. It has to have a thesis in your master's degree in the area of clinical, cognitive, counseling, developmental, educational, or school psychology. That covers a lot of areas in psychology, but those are the requirements to give you the background to jump into this PhD program. So we're looking for normally an 80% or A average in your previous graduate work. Continuing on with what is required. I'm going to summarize this. I'm not going to read it all out. So there are separate admissions for the MA and PhD in our faculty, but the two levels are a coherent program. So we anticipate people who are taking the MA in School and Applied Child Psychology are going to move into our PhD program. So during the MA, students are required to take the coursework to bring them up to speed. They might have to take additional courses to bring them up to speed to get to that PhD level in their MA. Okay, so the program chair would be the one who's assessing your applications. Okay. Additional requirements. So there are certain core courses that are taken at the master's graduate level. So this is for people who have received a master's degree from a different university. If the core courses need to be on your transcript, and you might need to provide your course outlines for them. Okay, there's 5 cognate areas, and I'm going to go over them in my next slide. So the core content areas or cognate areas. So we're looking for biological bases of behavior, cognitive affective bases of behavior, social bases of behavior, and individual behavior, and historical and scientific foundations of general psychology. Okay. What is optional, so now we're done the requirements, so we're looking at the optional parts of the application. So some programs do require the GRE. It is not required as part of our program admissions. Okay. If you have your scores, feel free to include them in your application. That's not a problem, but it's not a requirement. Okay, and people who are shortlisted for the PhD in school and applied child psychology, you may have to participate in a phone or virtual interview. Okay. Okay, that's done with the program requirements, admission requirements. So we're going to move into the supplemental documentation part of the application. So at the time of application, paper copies are not required of your transcripts. There's no need to order transcripts from the universities. Digital copies are totally fine, but they must be uploaded to your application. If you gain admission to the program, that is when we require the official copies of your transcripts, and more information would be provided in your offer of admission about that. We're looking for a statement of intent. Okay, resume, an updated resume or CV, and a writing sample as well. For the writing sample, we're looking for about 15 to 20 pages of content. Okay, that's excluding references, table of contents. So 15 to 20 pages of content. Also for your statement of intent, depending on your program, they are different lengths. So people who are interested in the critical policy, equity and leadership, or CPELs, applied linguistics and curriculum studies, your statement of intent needs to be 500 words. And believe me, those 500 words go quickly. Okay, a lot of people have asked if we are looking for a, like, who can they address their statement of intent to? Don't waste your word count. Get right into what you want to research, what your ideas are. It's a way to sell yourself to the admissions committee. People who are applying to the School and Applied Child Psychology, everybody gets 3 pages for their statement of intent. Okay, so for the writing sample, it's the same for for all programs. We're looking for 15 to 20 pages of content. What the admissions committee is looking for, they want to make sure that you can write at the academic level. I've got reference information on here, and I'm going to go over some more information about the references in a future slide. Additional supplemental documentation, English proficiency scores, if applicable, and more information about that can be found on our how to apply page and our admission requirements page. We're looking for a copy of a marriage certificate, and that's to provide proof of name change. That's if applicable. So if a previous degree is in your maiden name and you're now married and have a different last name, you would be required to supply that. If you're born outside of Canada, you must either provide proof of Canadian citizenship, your landed immigrant status, or your permanent residency. And if you're a permanent resident of Canada, you need to provide both the front and back of your permanent residency card. If you are an international applicant, you'll need to provide your study permit and student visa information when you arrive in Canada. So you'll have to show it at the border, as well as you'll have to provide it to our School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. More information will come about that in your offer of admission. Also, if you would like to include any other information you feel the admissions committee should have when considering your application, we understand life happens here. Sometimes people's grades aren't as high as they could have been because of life events happening. If you're in that situation, definitely include that as a supplemental document in your application. I told you I was going to get back to references. So for the references, we're looking for 3 academic references. You'll need to provide the name, the full name, the place of employment, and the professional email address of your referee. And I want to let you know that as soon as you hit next or hit save in the application system, your reference will immediately receive an email. Make sure your reference knows that they are going to receive that email. And if they are telling you that they haven't received that email, ask them to check their spam folder. Sometimes our messages do come across as spammy because of the system that sends it out. For supplemental questions, the admissions committee will review the supplemental questions that you answer in your application. Some are very pointed questions, some are kind of general, but we ask that you complete the supplemental questions in your application. We want to assess your application fairly, so please answer those questions. So this is the second and it's the final round, I promise. Okay, so the first question here. At the time of application, are you required to send in paper copies of transcripts? Yes or no? Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so the second question, when will your references receive the request to fill out their information? Immediately, within a week, or within a month? That's right, immediately. Thank you, everybody. Okay. So additional topics of discussion. So thank you everybody for RSVPing to this session. As you all know, in the RSVP form, I had asked for topics that you wanted covered. I think I covered most of them. These didn't fit in really anywhere. So the first is the supervisor selection. Somebody wanted more information about that. So having a potential supervisor and connecting with a potential supervisor before you submit your application, that is recommended. It's not required, but that's actually one of the additional questions, is who you would like to supervise you. So if you have a potential supervisor in mind, or if you've connected with someone, you can definitely include their name in the supplemental question. But I will let you know that having a potential supervisor agree to supervise you if you are admitted to the program does not guarantee admission. Okay, I want to be clear on that. You still have to go through the admissions process. Your application will be reviewed by an admissions committee. Okay, it's not just the supervisor or potential supervisor looking at your application. Your application will still go through the admissions process. The next point that somebody wanted to cover was non-research intensive master's degrees. So I will let you know that that if you don't have a research intensive master's degree, it is up to you if you would like to apply. The decision will be made on a case-by-case basis. If you want more information about that, please send me an email. I've got my email on this screen. It's info, like information, so info.graded@uwo.ca. So the difference between the EDD and the PhD, I've got a webinar for that. I hosted a webinar at the beginning of the admission, just after the applications opened. So there's a webinar for that. When I send out the slide deck, I've hyperlink already. It's going to link to our past events page, and there's an actual webinar for the difference between the EdD and the PhD. My guest star for that webinar was Dr. Philippa Myers. She's the program manager for the EdD program. And she actually completed her PhD here at Western quite a few years ago. She finished her PhD with us, and I was her graduate affairs assistant when she was completing her degree. So she had a really unique experience, like a unique outlook on both the EdD and the PhD. So I'm like, she's the best person to invite to this webinar. So some people were looking for an English proficiency exemption. There is a process for that. If you email info.graded, I will definitely share that with you. So don't submit your application until you connect with me. That would be great. Yes, there is a process. It's a long process. So, and we've got a great document. It's step-by-step instructions. So please email me about that. So if you have studied in a country where where the official language is English for a minimum of 2 years at the university level or 3 years at the college level, you could qualify for an exemption, but send me an email if you're unsure and I'll send you what our process is. So study permit and student visa questions. I don't have the specific training to answer those, and I do not want to give incorrect information. The best place to contact is Western International. Western International has at least 2 people that are fully trained on the visa and study permit process for Canada. They know everything there is to know about the ins and outs of applying, about what's required, what's not required, and they are up to date on the government regulations about permanent residency, student visas, everything like that. And I've got the link there. So when you get the slides, you'll be linked directly to Western International. And they do set up individual meetings, one-on-one meetings with students and applicants. They are a great, great resource. So I think I covered everything, and I feel like I've been talking for a long time. So now I want to hear from you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow people to send in questions in the chat. If you feel comfortable, you can raise your virtual hand. I will invite you to unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question verbally, or you can definitely ask it in the chat. So I do request that you do not send Jane, myself, or Nancy any private messages, just because it does get confusing for us to respond to that. Please send us any questions. We are here to answer any of your questions. And if you do decide to type in the chat, it can get a little hectic in there. Jane and Nancy are going to make sure I cover everything. So if you do type in the chat, please be patient. We will get to all questions. Okay. Alex, you're our first one. So brave. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Hi, Alex.
Okay, it's very informative, but I'm a little bit confused.
Okay.
You said there are 3 intakes in a year. Am I right?
No, there's 3 terms in a year. So we only have
Okay.
September start dates for our programs, but students go to school throughout the entire year. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's fall, winter, and summer that students do complete the program in. I always like to say I don't get summers off, so students don't get summers off either. But we only have September start dates for this program, for the PhD programs.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, a lot.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, so I've got a question here in the chat. So someone's asking, could you maybe speak to the difference between qualifying and comprehensive exam? I always thought that they were interchangeable. So depending on your program depending on what program you're in, is if you're going to complete a comprehensive or a qualifying exam. So it doesn't matter. They're not interchangeable. They're just different content. And if you are admitted to the program, we actually do have some guides available for students that are in depth, what questions you would be responding to and what's required in part in each of the qualifying or comprehensive exams. Jane and Nancy, did you have anything to add to that?
I think that's good.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, and so another question here in the chat. So somebody's asking, the long form writing samples that I have are my master's thesis, which is 80 pages, and a recent publication, 12 pages excluding references. Which can I submit? So a lot of our applicants, they will submit certain chapters of their master's thesis. So we are looking for that 15 to 20 pages of content. If you're really proud of your most recent publication, and you think it's better work, what I would recommend is upload 2 writing samples, and you can include information as to why you decided to do that. Okay. I hope that helps. So Julia, I see your hand up, but I'm going to take another question in the chat first, but I'll be right back to you. So somebody's saying one of the slides said there will be a session specifically for school and applied child psychology applicants. I don't have a webinar specifically for that. I did cover all of the information in this session, but if you do have other questions, definitely let me know. If you think there's something that I missed, definitely send me an email and we can cover it for sure. Okay, Julia, I'll take your question now. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Sure, thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
So I'm completing my program next summer. So I'm going to apply for a PhD in school and applied child psychology.
Oh, great.
So actually, I'm confused about the language exemption because I'm not going to be like at the time of the application, it's going to be just 1.5 years of graduate studies and not 2 completed years. But by the time when the PhD starts, the program starts, I will have those 2 years. So do I have to apply for exemption or it's already?
So Julia, what I'm going to get you to do is I'm going to get you to email me just because I don't want to lead you astray. I don't want to give you incorrect information. This is a unique situation and I don't have the answer right now. But if you email me, I will definitely find out for you and get you accurate information.
Okay.
Okay, so that my email address again is info like information.graded@uwo.ca.
Okay, and I just have one more question.
Okay, Jane, will you pop that email in the chat, please, again? Thank you. Yes, Julia, go ahead.
So about the all the documents that I have to provide if I get in, like in paper copies, I have already done all this process for my master's. Do I have to do it again for the PhD or?
Are you doing your master's in the Faculty of Education here?
Yes.
Okay, so if you've already submitted your paper copies to the Faculty of Education, when you get your offer of admission, you can send an email to your Graduate Affairs Assistant and the information and let them know that you have already submitted your paper copies and they'll sort that out for you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and if you are offered admission, the contact information will be in that offer of admission from the faculty. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thanks, Julia. Tessie, I'm just going to take another couple questions in the chat. Okay. But I see your hand up. Okay. So someone's asking, is there any flexibility in program structure? Like, can you take courses into your second year or take your comprehensive exam later? So for the program, what we want students to do is focus on their thesis. That's the most important part of your degree. And this is for this curriculum studies, applied linguistics, and the CBELS folks, okay? So we want you to get through those program requirements and then spend the majority of your time on your thesis. Now, we do offer some courses in the summer. They are very limited, but if you have a strong desire to take one of those courses and it really aligns with your research, we're not going to say no because it aligns with your research, but you're going to be behind a little bit. So the outline that I said was the model student, but we understand that life happens and we don't want students to fall behind. So that's why we push for the three courses, comprehensive or qualifying exam, and then into your thesis. That's the most important part of your degree, but we're not completely unreasonable. You will work with your supervisor to come up with a plan specifically for you. Tessie, would you like to take yourself off of mute and go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Alison.
Thank you.
Recently, I mailed a professor asking whether she would be available to supervise me, but I haven't heard from her yet. Should I
Okay.
email her again or just wait?
Give
I'm
it a
concerned
little,
about this.
yeah, give it a little time in between your emails. I'd say no more than once a week. But if you don't hear from that professor, you can still include their name in your application.
Mhm.
Okay.
But should I mention that she didn't respond or just to mention that I got in touch with her?
I would say that you could say that you had sent an email. You had
Okay.
tried to connect with them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Alison.
Thanks, Tessie. Okay, I'm going to go back over to the chat here. So somebody's asking, when we get an email from the admissions office that your preliminary assessment has been completed, does it imply that our application has been forwarded to the admissions committee? Not yet. So you won't receive, you will receive the email that your application has gone through the preliminary assessment process, but then this department works on it. So there's a few different considerations to keep in mind. So we work on the application and we do some processing on it, and then it's sent to the admissions committee. However, it depends on when the admissions committee is going to be meeting. So I will let you know that some programs, they do hold the applications to deadline. The School and Applied Child Psychology does hold applications to deadline. So if you've applied to that program, you won't hear until into February about the status of your application. But I will let you know that we do not hold on to admission decisions. As soon as the committee lets the graduate programs office know what their decisions are, we immediately go out to applicants. We don't sit on them at all. We totally understand that applicants are eager to hear the outcome of their application, so we don't sit on that information until a certain date or anything. Okay, I hope that helps. Okay, so someone graduated from our TESOL program here at Western. It's not research focused. And then there's a master's degree in another country. So Gianna, I hope I'm saying your name right. I'm going to have you email me just because that I have a lot of follow-up questions. So if you send me an email to that info.graded@uwo.ca, I've got some questions for you. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, so somebody says, how long does it typically take for applications to be reviewed? When would we hear? We're going to tell you as soon as we know. like I said, we don't hold on to that information for any reason. As soon as we hear from the admissions committee, we immediately let the applicants know. Okay. So someone has a question about references. Are they looking for strictly academic references, or will professional references be accepted? So if you've been out of school for a while, we understand that not everybody could get the academic references. Because this is a research intensive program, I would recommend to have at least 2 academic references, and then you could put a professional reference in there as well. Even if it's one, try to get at least 1 academic if possible, but I would recommend 2, just because it is a research intensive program and that's what the admissions committee is looking for. But we're not completely unreasonable. We understand everybody has different situations. So try for that too, but it's understandable if you can't get that. Okay, so someone's saying, I understand that applicants who are lacking an academic background in the field may be required to take extra courses. I was wondering if the opposite could occur, if an incoming student who has taken a similar course in their MA could receive credit for that course. So I will let you know, advanced standing, so for advanced standing, sometimes we do offer advanced standing. It has to be requested at the time of application. Okay, and it is up to the admissions committee. I will let you know, excuse me just a second. I've been talking too much. I will let you know that if a credit is used towards your master's, you can't double dip and use that credit towards your PhD. So for example, if you're required to take 6 courses in your master's and you only took 6 courses, none of those courses would be eligible for advanced standing to your PhD degree. If your master's requirement was 6 courses and you took 7, that 7th course could possibly count towards your PhD degree. I hope that makes sense. Okay, if you have further questions, let me know and maybe I can explain it better in text. Someone's asking, for the writing sample, which is more important, the level of work, master's or undergrad, or the quality of work? The greatest paper you've ever written. So the admissions committee is looking to make sure you can write at that scholarly level. So I would recommend, as long as it's at 15 to 20 pages, include your best work. Okay, some of our applicants have only completed the MA and they don't have any other publications, so they submit their MA thesis. But I would recommend your best work to get your best possible application. Okay, last question in the chat. Keep sending them on in if you still have questions. So requirement is an A grade for master's. What is the GPA score for that? So we're looking for 80%. Western doesn't calculate using, like our university does not count using GPAs. So we convert everything into a percentage scale, and it's an 80% requirement. I'm sure there's charts online that would be the equivalencies, but we're looking for an A or an 80% admission average. Okay. So someone's working as a research assistant, and the referees would be principal researchers. So those researchers will provide with recommendation letters. Will they be taken as professional or academics? So I believe that they would be considered professional just because you're working with them in a professional capacity, whereas somebody who is an academic reference, they would be an instructor for a course that you would be taking. Okay, so we actually have specific questions that we ask the references, and when the reference fills out their information, they actually select if they're going to be an academic or a professional reference for you. So if you're worried about it, if you have that research assistantship and you're using that reference, that would be a professional reference. That's more of a professional capacity. Does that make sense? Great, thank you. Okay, wow, we're reaching our 6 o'clock. I scheduled this for an hour, but if you have any questions, I'm not going to cut everybody off at 6. If you have questions, definitely stick around and we can go over that. So I am conscious of everyone's time. I want to thank everybody for attending. If you have questions, keep sending them in. If you want to be brave and ask your question verbally, that's great too. Okay, it seems the questions are calming down, so don't feel the need to stick around, but if you want to, I'm not going to kick you out. Okay, thanks everybody.